Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Millennial series of the Walt Weekly podcast, Friday Night Live. My name is Walter Latham, your host, along with your co-host, Michelle Sweeney McCombs. And finally, the panel. We may only get half the panel tonight, or 2/3 or 1/3 of the panel tonight. And Michelle will introduce the panel to you shortly. Let me just take a quick second to explain our Millennial series. These are guests that were born into this generation and against the many odds that they were faced with, work hard to achieve success. And we want to shine a light on that. This is not to say that they have reached the pinnacle of their careers, but are battling it out, with some successes behind them and maybe a great deal more in front of them. This struggle is positioning their children, our future of our community, for the challenges ahead. As I've said, I have confidence that our future is in good hands. So we're going to highlight the millennials when we can. That's why we call it a series. In today's show, we have a millennial, all right, which Michelle will introduce him to you. But the title of today's show is Interview with West Point Grad and Financial Services Executive, Captain Jevan Willis, retired. And Michelle?
Hey, thank you, Walter, and welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much. Today's show is sponsored by Michelle Sweeney Hair and Skincare. Our intro and outro music is provided by Uncle Nephew. Today's panel member joining us is Christopher Sweeney out of New Jersey, owner and CEO of Johnny Roof Steakhouse, and also a retired sanitation worker. We appreciate you taking the time out. Thank you to our live audience for joining us. Today's guest, Jevan Willis, right? Retired U.S. Army captain and West Point graduate. Jevan is a finance executive and U.S. Army officer veteran. He is the Global Treasury Transformation Lead at Micro Focus International as a principal consultant. He was a senior director and global operations support leader for Treasury operations at GE Capital and operations manager for Enterprise Initiatives, PMO. He was also a vice president at RBS Citizens Bank as strategic program manager and the head of business management, directly supporting the vice chairman and prior VP foreign exchange operations manager. While in the U.S. Army, he was a captain and headquarters company commander for the garrison at West Point, USMA, diversity admissions officer at West Point, Signal Corps Node Center deputy commander and platoon leader, Fort Bliss, Texas, and air missile defense launcher platoon leader in South Korea. Later, he served in the New York National Guards, supporting the domestic all-hazard response team East. I won't give everything away, but you definitely wear a lot of hats, Jevan. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you giving us your time on Friday evening and giving our live audience a listen to who you are and joining us on our Millennial segment. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful intro.
Yes.
Yeah, before I start out, Jevan, a couple of years, folks, Jevan and I did a episode on emergency preparedness. Mm-hmm. And that's where we heard the term the go bag. So if there's a hazardous condition, hurricane, anything. Mm-hmm. You remember that, Michelle?
Yeah. I actually got a go bag. I got one too.
This was prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely.
Where we were discussing what you need and can't. Yes.
Yeah, you had to be ready.
Yeah. We were and the the coincidence, and I wouldn't say irony, but then you had COVID, where there's really nowhere to run. You got a mask on. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how that go bag would come into play here.
Yeah,
but,
you never know. You never know.
Was,
just best to have it at the door.
Yeah, I think that was more on the hunker down and shelter in place mode. So
yeah, which we did do that, you know. So, but folks, I'm gonna broadcast that episode because it's still relevant, and it plays into a lot of what we're seeing. But we're in the twilight zone here.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get on with Captain Jevan Willis, retired.
Yeah.
And first off, I want to welcome you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you, Mr. Latham, for the invitation to participate in this forum at the Walt Weekly Show, and also to Michelle and the panel. You all do a great job providing different perspectives and providing a really good conversation. So I appreciate the opportunity to share my story, experience, and hopefully, maybe have a positive impact or maybe inspire something in the next generation. So thanks again for this invitation.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jevan. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you have small kids, so I know that takes up a lot of time. Plus, you're working, and but we really appreciate you coming on tonight. So let's. I want to start with this. Let's talk a little bit about where you came from and how it was growing up in the Detroit area.
Yeah. So first and foremost, let me just say my story, like many, is an example of it takes a village to raise a child perspective. I know some other folks have used that as a reference, but I think I've been impacted by so many great people who believed in me, invested time in me, gave me a chance, from my family, teachers, coaches, commanders, supervisors, and a multitude of friends and mentors who even continue to support me today. So I'm grateful and thankful to be here today for that. And so just to give you a little bit, I mean, I know not a lot of people from my area kind of made it to this point, so I feel blessed in that aspect. But to your reference to Detroit, Michigan, I lived there. I was born there, and only really lived there for a couple years. I grew up in a town called Lorain, Ohio. Probably the 16 years there. My mom was a single mother working as an EKG tech in Detroit, and my father wasn't really in the picture at the time. So, living a single mother trying to raise 3 kids in Detroit just wasn't working. And then so my aunts and uncles, came down and helped her move. And then we moved to my grandmother's house, where I grew up there. And I felt like Lorain, Ohio was a relatively a good place to live, a good childhood. We technically were considered low income, but it didn't really seem like it initially because we lived in the biggest house on the street. And that was primarily due to my grandfather, who had built our family house on the west side in the 1950s or so. This was a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood, and that it gradually transitioned into more of an African American neighborhood. So it was a moment of reflection of my getting to the roots. And my grandfather, he was my reference to some African American history, as he was basically one of the first Black general contractors in Lorain, and built over about 70 houses within that city. And so still have signature chimneys there today. So, he's one of those people that I look back on. He helped build some of the Tuskegee airfields in Alabama, where he got his certifications. And that's kind of like where I grew up. And the people, I guess the core people who have had that big impact on me was really my grandmother. While I was, she's originally from Nashville, Tennessee, believed in corporal punishment, made sure we all had some, go to church and Sunday school, sang in the choir, participate in community activities and volunteering. So initially moving to Ohio was difficult for my mom. She had trouble finding a job, had to switch careers in the height of the deindustrialization economy of the Rust Belt cities.
Yes, and all those companies moved out; those factories were closing up and stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah, steel mills, the automotive companies, and the shipyards, we're all moving overseas and down south. So that's kind of like where it was with me and my mother. But I thought ultimately it was okay living in Lorain, Ohio. Once we had transitioned from Detroit.
Does anyone have any questions about for Jevan before I move on?
No, not at all. I just, commend his upbringing because we don't have that now for this generation.
Yeah, you used to get whoopings, Jevan, before I move on?
Yeah. Yeah, I referenced the corporal punishment because, I was that generation that was like...
Yeah, I got what you meant.
Yeah, me too.
So that's where it was. And I mean, ultimately, I think it helped me to be a better person. Whether her way of handling things wasn't necessarily the way we do things now, it helped me to get more discipline and helped me ultimately, I think, when I was in the military.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you got to be able to listen and take instruction and follow suit.
Which is what you had growing up. Did your grandfather had any influence on you in reference to going into the military?
Well, it's funny you say that. My grandfather had already he passed away when I was before I was even born, but he was kind of a core person that everybody looked at. And my stepfather was in the Navy, and also my uncles. Most of my uncles on my mom's side were in Vietnam or in Korea. My mom had a very big family. She had about 10 brothers and sisters spread between the Lorain and Cleveland footprint, and most of them, coming out of that Vietnam era, they didn't necessarily have the best experience because when they returned back home, they were some of them, they didn't get the best reception. So at first they were a little hesitant and like, hey, if you're gonna go to the military, you got to really be know what you want, be ready to serve, and give it all your best, and ultimately have a plan where you set some goals and know when you plan on transitioning out or what you're going to do, be a lifer. And I think that really helped my perspective when it came time to choosing to go to West.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So let's jump to your high school time. Okay. Then, did you do any preparatory work for West Point? When did you decide to go to West Point, or did I miss that?
Yeah. No. So it's funny. So my mom, she was really a core person in my education. Going back to elementary school, I must have went to 4 different schools. And when we lived on the west side, we moved to the east side when she met my stepfather. And so that going to that different neighborhood was a little bit different, but I was getting bused to the south side. And they had these different programs called the Magnet program. And it was like a math science program. Then they had the fine arts program. And they had all kinds of stuff like NASA. We went to this thing called Marsville for NASA at the Lewis Glenn Research Center, where, they're teaching you how to brainstorm about how you would live if you were on a colony in Mars. And, I was the tunnel engineer, So that was one of the things that kind of made me like, wow, maybe in the future I could be an engineer. Also, they had like, little cute computer camps. But, it's funny because the whole school system wasn't always that great. You really had to have been identified. And so my mom put me from one school to another school to another school until she got me to the program that was holistically going to help me in education. And so once I got to high school, it was like a moment of like, I felt more prepared to do well in school, and I got pretty good grades. I was an honor student during that time. I think I was like 3rd out of my class of 305, or no, I was 5th out of 305 in high school, and then I was like the president of the National Honor Society. I was the vice president of student council. I was the battalion command sergeant major for the JROTC. I was the assistant drum major for the marching band. I was I played 5 varsity sports. I was all state track. I was played varsity baseball, basketball, golf, and wrestle. And
wow.
So yeah,
did you have time to go to the restroom?
Yeah, I was listening. Key word there was golf for me. Yeah, so
Yeah. It was funny golf because that was around the time when Tiger Woods, was starting to peak around #99 time period, and they had started a local program because a couple years before that, probably about almost half decade before, they had cut out the school sports, and the crime rate increased and kids were doing things wrong, and then they were like, all right, we got these new sports back in, and then they brought golf, and they were like, hey, you can play free, and you get a free set of golf clubs. And I was just like, that's all I had to hear. I was like,
right.
Sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jevan, so from your perspective, you said your mother transferred you to different schools until she found the one that she thought appropriate for you. All right. Now, was that a public school or were those private institutions?
Yeah, these were all public schools. So, we didn't have much money. And so that's what was good about Lorraine. Like, if you're low income, you could potentially go to any school. You had to test out. And so my mom, she started me, with flashcards when I was young. And I could read probably before I was, in kindergarten. So, that carried on throughout. And then I went to Washington, which was a regular public. Then I went to Lowell, which is on the south side, Lincoln Academy, then Lowell Academy. So these were all academies, and they had specific programs that you could be in, but it was all publicly funded. So, and then I went on to the Southview High School, which, funny enough, later on got closed down, but that was the main magnet program for the high school students.
Okay, now were they predominantly black or predominantly white?
So yeah, it's interesting. So like as I mentioned, the south side of Lorraine, funny enough, if you look at the statistics, Lorraine is like about say 60,000 or so, and there's the west side, which ended up being predominantly black. The white side was kind of predominantly east side, and then South Lorraine was predominantly Puerto Rican. And so that's a lot of my best friends, got to know going to school on the south side, and a lot of the girls I dated, funny enough, were of Latino descent back then. So definitely loved that area, and that's where I got my love for rice and beans and a number of different foods. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. We don't want to put you. I hear you.
For good times there.
Okay. All right. Great. Yeah, I was just thinking because you mentioned all of these different activities, that you were exposed to, that your schools had. So that's what, prompted me to just ask you whether they were white schools or black schools. Because a lot of the black schools, they didn't have, those types of activities. But you said it was well funded, so.
Well, no, I wouldn't say well funded. Let me not say that. So a lot of the programs are like state or federal funded. So like they had some other programs called like Upward Bound, which was like a college preparatory type of summer program, which went through one of the colleges is called Oberlin College. Which was about almost 30 minutes from where Lorraine is. And you got to go and on the weekend sometimes, or during the week, you would go up there, get to meet with college kids. You took classes in the summer for math and English, like calculus and advanced English comp. We got to visit, we went on like a HBCU college tour down south. They had this Upward Bound Olympics where you would go to different colleges. I think we visited like Bowling Green, Toledo University, a couple other universities in the summer. You competing in basketball, track, or whatever sport that you did. And then they had the Urban League, had a male mentoring program, which was still outside of that, but they were incorporating and partnering in the school. So they had a breakfast program in the morning I used to participate in. I was in the Lorraine in the youth NAACP, which was an outside program, but it was basically grooming us, helping us to understand about civil rights. So they had other programs there too, but the funding came around later on. I think once the government, I don't know when it was, but they started to enhance the funding into the schools for those magnet programs and other types of college preparatory programs.
Okay. Now I see that who prompted, a lot of kids, even myself, when I was growing up, the pressure to do well came from my, contemporaries. And of course, my home. All right, and the community. If you came home with a bad report card, everybody in town knew about it before you even got home with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, what prompted you to do so well in school? I just want to know, and I want the listeners to know.
Yeah. What's funny? Like, initially, my grandmother was like, one of those people that was like, you need to get, just stay in school, get good grades. My mom had ingrained it in me. My brother and sister, were also, I saw them. My sister went off to college, to University of Cincinnati. And that was one of the main things she would say to me, like, where are you going to go to school? And I'm little, and she's like, I'm going to go to college. Like, I couldn't even pronounce it. But I just knew, like, that was a goal, to go to college. I had aunts and uncles that were first generation college graduates. They were nurses. A lot of them went to the medical field, nurses and nurse practitioners. And it was in me, and I was like, I have to go to college. The key thing about it was my mom told me early on, because my sister had, she had taken out a lot of loans, and they put out most of their money on her education, that it was like, she said, I'm not going to be able to pay for your college. And that also had a play into choosing to go into a military academy, because funny enough, like going to West Point, it's a fully funded scholarship. So it's, I think, valued at like $400,000 now. And you actually get paid while you're at college as a stipend, because a lot of the training you do and the things that you do studying abroad and other kinds of activities, you get a chance to play Division I sports. And that was crucial because I wanted to run track or play basketball at college level. And I had a chance to do that. And the other thing is just, I felt like I wanted to be an engineer. I knew that. And they had a really strong electrical engineering program that was like fourth in the country. And I really wanted to do the computer engineering. It was going to be a computer architectural design program. And it was really inspiring to see all of those elements come together. And at the end of the day, so many people, my family had served in the military. I was in the Jrotc in high school. And I never forget, we had this cadet who came to visit.
And what does that stand for, JROTC?
That's the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps.
Okay.
And you basically, you dress up, you wear the Army uniform. I was in the drill team. I was a drill team commander. And we would compete in these competitions, like throwing, rifles and, doing all these different types of steps. And that was like pretty, that's the fun part, that the rifle team and all of that. But this cadet came and he was speaking to us almost like, hometown recruiting, college, public relations council, I think it's called. And I mean, this guy was like Captain America, like ready to go. He was just, valedictorian, all American in sport. He was just everything. And I'm like, man, I think I need to go to that place. If I'm going to go to the military, that's where I would want to go. So that really helped shape me in wanting to go. And my junior ROTC instructor, he was a very supportive guy. And he was like, hey, I remember my junior year, he was like, Ron, like, not many people get a chance to go to West Point. And he's like, you really have a chance, And I was hesitant because, I was applying to a lot of different colleges. I didn't know all of it, but I was, I think I got accepted to Morehouse. I was thinking about Ohio State, more local,
Right.
a couple other schools, it's probably about 10 different schools, but none of them really offered full scholarship. A lot of them wanted to only give you a partial scholarship. And then athletically, I ran track, but I didn't make it to state in my senior year. And I remember, going to visit a lot of these colleges. I think at University of Akron, one of the coaches I met with while I was down on a college visit, and I was like, hey, I did good. I made it to the regional finals. This is what I jumped. I think it was like 22.5 or something at the time, long jump. And he was just like, yeah, I don't know. We got a lot of guys that are good. We'll see what happens. We don't have a lot of spots. And this is what's so crazy. So when I made it to the final. It was the state finals in Dayton, Ohio. And I remember two guys I ran against. I took third. So if you were in the top three, if you got gold, silver, or bronze, you got all state honors. And so the one guy, Lee Evans, he ended up going to the NFL. Another guy, he ended up going to the Olympic trials. But I was like 0.5 seconds off of that guy. And he was just like, wow, I felt good. I came off the finish line, and I swear it was like 5 or 6 college coaches. And literally as I'm walking, I'm getting interviewed, and they come following me to the bleachers, and they're like, yeah, we'll offer you a full scholarship right now. And I was like, wow. Like,
I would say wow too. Yeah.
Where were you at, when I came to visit, your college? And, but it just goes to show one of those things that you really have to make it to the next level to get the offer of full scholarship, so to speak. So those are the things I think that contributed.
What would you say, to the student today, in a similar situation in high school or grade school, with aspirations of going to West Point? What do they need to think about?
Yeah.
All right, and do.
So it's interesting. So at one point later on, I find it funny enough, I got a chance to go back to West Point and be a what we would call Southwest Outreach officer. It's like a diversity admissions officer, and I focused in on the southern part of the United States, and, Texas, Mexico, and more so in the Oklahoma and Southwest area. And I had to really look at what I would do to get and tell students. And so the thing is, I tell them is that it's, one, don't look at it as it's like it's too hard. It's possible. I'm the example, and that if you get good grades, you're active in the community. You have some leadership experiences. You have to be good physically fit, meaning if you play a sport, or like hopefully at a varsity level. If you are a person who really, they kind of look at your class rank more than necessarily like your SAT or ACT scores, though the ACT and SAT were pretty critical back then. And it's one of the main reasons why I ended up going to the prep school, because of the SAT later. And it correlates to the best of what I thought I was doing. And I think the other thing, you have to be medically qualified, which is basically saying that, you're healthy, you didn't break any bones, or you're or current, issues there, and, having major illnesses. And lastly, you have to have a congressional nomination or a senator.
That's what I want to hear. That's a key thing there. How do you manage that? To get that letter.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So the junior ROTC program that I was in, it started when I was a freshman, and by the time we were seniors, we had really built up that program as far as competing in competitions. We had got an honor unit with distinction. And when you get that honor unit with distinction, that gives the unit the capability to nominate a candidate to go to West Point. The funny thing about it was we didn't get it until that year that I went. And then the congressman who was from my district was who's now the senator, Sherrod Brown. And there was another guy from Lorraine Catholic who ended up going and getting that slot. And so they told me, it's funny enough, they were like, hey, you can go to the Naval Academy. I got I got a nomination to the Naval Academy. And I'm like, wait a minute, but I didn't apply to the Naval Academy.
That's Annapolis, right?
That's Annapolis.
Right.
And they were like, well, if you apply, there's a good chance you might get in. I was like, well, they both pretty much have the same standard. But at the time, it's like, I just felt like West Point, but it was built in 1802. It's just so much history. You got so many great presidents, astronauts, Rhodes scholars that went there. And I felt like that was the place I wanted to be. And also, I wasn't a fan of the water. it was my dad was my stepfather was in the Navy, and he told me some of his experiences on these ships and these submarines, and I was just like, the last thing I want to be is stuck out in the middle of the ocean. But that's kind of like a joke in that. But yeah, no, definitely. I think kids can get in there if you work hard, if you're focused. And the last thing is that you really have to want it. When you go to West Point, you're gonna get. I'll say it's not easy. You get in there your freshman year. You've got R Day, which is reception day. The cadets are yelling at you, telling you to do push-ups. Like just everything you do wrong is a reason for them to find some activity for you to do. Or just smoke you just because they feel like it. And then you go through this for that's your beast barracks is what's like your basic training. And but once you complete that, in the summer you're welcome and you're accepted into the Corps of Cadets, and you feel like you've accomplished something. You still a plebe, and that freshman year, you're doing random duties, taking out the laundry and getting people's mail, and all these different things you have to do, and the academics there are a bar none are really high. I'll say this. So this is the one thing I did feel a little bit bad out of high school was that, I thought I was smart in high school. I was like my junior year, I got straight A's, and I thought I was pretty good. And I mean, when I got there, it was just on a whole nother level. That's when you realize that there are other kids in other schools in other states that are just astounding. I mean, we had a couple guys that were Rhodes scholars after graduating. I mean, they all took all AP courses throughout high school. Some people were like, they maxed out their SAT scores. I mean, some of them were homeschooled, Eagle Scouts. It was just different. Like that whole joke about, Will Smith and the best of the best of the best, with honors, like that's where you see those folks. So it was like, it was really a wake up call. Like, you went from big man on campus to, you're just average. So.
Right. I was going to ask if you ever felt like, you wouldn't make it or within that surrounding and how was the diversity there?
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the hardest things was graduating, because they have this method called the bear method. And what they do is they bombard you with tests. Like every third week, it's called a third week, and they'll have you might have 5 or 6 courses, and you'll have a major quiz or a midterm exam in every class. And you talk about all nighters. Like I was a double E major, so in the joke was that our classes were in the basement, so they called it the dungeon. Because you had to go to the lab for certain things, so you didn't sleep sometimes. Sleep deprivation was kind of just a thing that you just embraced. And in addition to that, you couldn't really catch up during the daytime. You couldn't take sleep naps and nothing because your room always had to be in a pristine type of called AMI, which is inspection ready in essence. Literally on Saturdays you'd have Sammy, which is they come through literally with a white glove and inspect your room. And so you really had to keep your standards up there. But I think English was one of my most difficult courses, and there was a point in time when I really was scared. You know what I mean? I didn't do so well in one of the courses, and I actually I had to take it over, and I was like, shoot, I had to get nominations, recommendations from my teachers, my coaches, because I could have gotten kicked out. And it was a moment where that's when you realize the support and the mentors, the folks that were really looking out for me, like, this guy, I think he has potential. He'll make a great officer. And also playing, D1 sports, that was a good thing. My coach was like, hey, we need to keep this guy. It was just, I was playing team handball, and my junior year, we were the national champion. And I was selected to be on the national team, alternate on the national team that went to the Pan Am Games in 2003 and ended up taking a bronze. But having those people to support you and look out for me was one of the crucial things. So, outside of that, when you're in basic training, you have those days when you're thinking you can quit. I remember one point, it was like, because I knew I had, around my freshman or sophomore year, I knew that I had I had been accepted to other universities. In the back of your mind, you're always thinking like, do I want to put up with this? You're a little grumpy, you have a bad day. But at the end of the day, like when you graduate, it's going to be all well worth it. And being a member of the alumni and just the long gray line, as they call it, I think it's probably one of the best decisions I ever could have made in the country. I mean, usually a number, West Pointers, you call them, reach out to them on LinkedIn, and usually, they'll at least respond back to you. You may be able to, do just a informal conversation with them about their career or industries, and even from military officers transitioning out. It's just a different type of scenario. And I got my master's in management and leadership from Western University, and I just didn't feel like I got that same experience. Or from they have a great program and a huge alumni side, don't get me wrong, but it's just something different about knowing that everybody went through the same or similar experiences. It gives that they have a certain type of pedigree in order to make it through. Yeah.
Hey, could I ask you a question real quick there?
Please.
Thank you for your service, by the way, and your resume is impeccable, man. Beautiful.
Appreciate that.
It's great to see that. Outside of the prestige of West Point and the hard work and all of those things, what would you say to a young man coming from your upbringing, a place where you came from, some of these urban communities? What would be the one thing outside of all of that other prestige that you could say West Point could offer them to carry them through the rest of their life?
I think the key thing is what it drew. I think most of the people I know is that leadership. I think it's listed as the premier leadership institution in the country, and it's in all of this, just the statistics. I think pound for pound, they're in the top CEOs, of institutions. The commanders, the generals. They can go down the list. The presidents, Eisenhower, Grant. It's just the leadership experience is just above, beyond. Like, you really start off as the lowest of the low, like private, and then you move to being what they call a yearling or a yuck, which you have one person in charge of, and you're grooming that person, trying to teach them. You're doing, call it, cadet troop leading training and stuff with them. Then you're a platoon leader, or you're a platoon sergeant, and then potentially even a company commander, and you're in charge of maybe like 100, 400 or 500. Some as a brigade commander, about 4,000 students, and that's really, and these are in charge of your peers, which is sometimes one of the most difficult people to lead. So I think the leadership experience there is bar none. And then the academics, I want to say they're like number 2 in the civil engineering program, like number 4 in electrical engineering. I remember there was an article that Forbes magazine did, like 2009, and they were listing West Point as the number 1 college to go to above Harvard. And I just remember being like, wow, like, and they had a different way of ranking it based off of their weighting schedule. But, it's just, when you look at all the things and the benefits you have in that aspect of it, and then serving your country on top of it. Which is interesting too, because when I got out of the Army, well, when I got into the Army, let me say as a second lieutenant, it was around, I graduated around 2004. So it was right around the beginning of the subprime, mortgage thing. It was like a bubble was about to hit. And then around 5 years, you have a 5-year commitment. You can choose to get out. And I, at time I had been a platoon leader in Korea, and then Fort Bliss, Texas, Air Missile Defense, and then was a recruiter at West Point, and then took the command as the HAC commander. And that's what kind of made me want to stay a couple more years. But it was hard because all the jobs it was like no jobs available. Everybody was trying to go to get their master's in business school. So it was like a moment where it's like, you might not want to get out of the military at that time. But you have a guaranteed job in the military. So as long as you do well and you get promoted, that was also a good sense of security, outside of the fact that, let's not forget that, there's a risk in being in the military. It's not for everybody. And there's a possibility that you could die. So, I mean, not to say that lightly, but you have to go into it with open arms and open eyes, knowing that, that's a possibility.
To follow up on what Chris was asking, I want to look at it from a person that's growing up in a poor, urban environment that's poor. They don't have the support let's say that you did. All right. What would we tell them? How would what do you think they should be focused on? Or what is the path that you would see for them? Oh, that's okay. Say a kid growing up in an urban community, boy, girl, let's say in New York, and they don't have access to the facilities that you did when you were going to school. Okay, how would they go about, being successful, with that glide path that you had?
Yeah. What's interesting? So I guess as I look at my transition out of the military into kind of the corporate world, and one of the key things I remember, my old boss, who was a full bird colonel when I was the HAC commander in charge of all the staff and faculty at West Point, and it was more so for administrative and training, logistics, and that thing. But he was like, you need to get some skill sets that are transferable. And granted, I had my master's in management leadership. I had an electrical engineering degree, focused on computer architectural design. One of the things he said is like, you should probably take some certification type of courses, and they had Lean Six Sigma, the Greenbelt training, and that was like something that I went through. It was probably one of the biggest things that at first when I got out and recruiters were looking at my resume, that they noticed that, and it was like, oh, okay, like you understand, how to find efficiencies and product improvement things, and so doing that type of training was a good thing. Also, as a recruiter at West Point, that was one of the transferable skill sets, and I think that also helped me get my first role working at Michael Page International. I was a supply chain and finance recruitment executive recruiter in New York footprint, and I was working in the Chrysler building, like 29th floor, and I was just excited to be in New York City. I guess doing the whole, the rat race, running, taking the commuter train, and that role in itself was like my wake up call, because I'm talking to all these executives, folks in finance. They're just doing, huge things. And I'm like, man, how do I get into that? And so funny enough, one of the things that they had was this thing called the Service Academy Career Conference. And many times, basically, this is a conference for going back to the Alumni Association, where military officers who are transitioning into the civilian force go, and jobs come to this event, and basically looking to hire West Point or other Joint Service, Naval Academy, Air Force Academy, Coast Guard Academy graduates. And that also helped open the doors, where I met one of the guys who was a Naval Academy grad, and he was a submarine guy. And, he was like, hey, what do you know about finance? And I was like, well, in high school, in college, we had, I was in this little finance club because another great thing that West Point offers, they have this thing called the Cow Loan. And it was like at the time a $25,000 loan at 1%, which is crazy low if you think about it, and you're a fresh college student coming into your own life. That's like a lot of money. It's a lot of kids bought cars. At the time I had bought a condo, and I got a car at an auction, and I was like, the other thing I was doing was I was investing in options, a website called Options Express.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How much did you lose?
I lost a bit, it's funny. I ended up balancing out. We had a guy who.
That's awesome. You can.
Yeah, I hit my mute button by mistake. Oh, yeah, I know Christopher has something to say about that one. Hopefully, we can get him back. Yeah.
Now, I started out. I invested in. I think the worst one was Krispy Kreme, but I did good on some others like Boston. Some of the blue chip stuff. Which are kind of gimmies, but it was an awesome experience to be able to do that in college a little bit, and that was kind of the biggest transferable skill set to get me into working at in the bank at RBS Citizens Bank at that time. So, and I started as the vice.
Yeah, I did want to pivot over to I spent so much time on your early childhood and the West Point thing that, we have similar backgrounds in financial services. All right. And that's what you do. All right. So why did you leave the military? I think it was medical. So we addressed that. We responded to that question. So how do you find financial services? And you've been there since 2006, 4?
Oh, actually, no, about 2010 is when I actually officially transitioned out. I was still in the National Guard after I got out of the Army, but I went into work in the Citizens Bank around the beginning of end of 2010, beginning of 2011ish, and I went into foreign exchange operations. My boss at the time, female, one of the best leaders I had ever worked for at the time, and she, her thing was like, if you understand, electrical engineering stuff and calculus, you can figure out interest rate derivatives. And I was supporting the sales and trading desk at the time. We were processing. I had 3 teams. We were processing trades on a platform called Wall Street, and we basically.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar. Michelle, you're familiar with Wall Street too, right?
Oh yeah, that's
that front to back system. I think it was mostly back office then. Yeah,
back
go ahead.
Office.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was, so I had to meet with the traders, and, whenever they had an issue, a transaction to go through, I was the guy getting the nasty gram or the call, like, make this work, where's the deal,
Right.
They sometimes don't speak in that good language.
Right.
So I'm the guy who had, I was
getting treated like a golfer.
Yeah, right, but it was a great introduction into, the finance world. I was also managing the middle office, and then I had a team that was processing foreign checks for the Rhode Island and Massachusetts footprint. So it really introduced me. It was like, birth by fire, if you will. And my boss recommended me for this thing called the Emerging Leader Development Program. And at the time, it was like the first time they had ever really did it formalized. And we worked on, got a chance to basically meet with senior leaders. We did all these panels. They had this whole business and banking program we went through. And at the end of it, you worked on this big project. Mine was for anti-money laundering, trying to decrease a backlog of know your customer, they call it.
KYC, yeah.
Yeah, and we were able to get that down, I think in like 18 months to 6 months. So that was a big deal at the time. And they were like, hey, at the end of it, eventually it got to a point where they're like, we want you to interview for this other role, and I was working for the vice chairman, basically as his business manager, become the head of their business support. And I got the role, and I was kind of shocked because I'm like, when the guy called me about it, he's like, hey, you got to interview this. I'm like, for who? What? Like me? Like, But at the time, it was funny because they had selected me to be in this commercial that kind kind of like as a brand ambassador, where they shot me as a foreign exchange operations manager. And I think in that commercial, I said I wanted to be like the next level of the group operations manager or leader. And I remember at the end of that ELDP program, I met the vice chair, and he was like, "Oh, you seem like you're doing good things." And then lo and behold, I'll end up working for him. So it was pretty awesome. I went from like literally like working, in a small office, across town to like in like the top floor on the same floor as the CEO of the company, it was just a wild experience, but it was just literally like getting an MBA in a year. It was basically just so many great things. I was on the operating committee, the executive committee. We had to handle a lot of the risk and regulatory reporting stuff. During that time, we got a new CEO. We wanted to do cost cutting. We did an initial public offering. We sold off 100 bank branches. We separated from our parent company, which was RBS. So it was a lot that we did. And my role kind of transitioned from kind of being a chief of staff, business support, to more of a managing strategic programs. And then that's how we built our operations PMO, basically building all that work that we were doing that were more, project focused. And the main cost cutting initiatives. Yeah.
I understand. No, go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying it was just a great experience, and I felt like that was kind of one of the key things that launched my trajectory. And I would say, like, if there's programs like that for the younger generation to get into, you find somebody who you feel is supporting you in some form and believes in you, and it almost becomes a mentor to you, and is willing to send you forward into those types of things, I would recommend doing.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, now Michelle and I, we came from operations support. All right, we supported we did FX, we did options. Yeah, you remember in the money, out of the money, the premiums. Yeah. P&L. Standing by the traders. We
reconciliation.
We Nostro reconciliations. That's we run that department.
IS.
You know exactly what I'm talking about there.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. I see you have a similar background. But
when I said that to Walter, I was like, I feel like I look up to him because he did it like before me. So I'm like that next generation looking up to him and to you also, then Michelle.
Yeah, that's where we met. Michelle and I met. That's
we met. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Commerce Bank.
We met at Swiss Bank. We met at Swiss Bank.
Oh, Swiss Bank, right?
Yeah, which is now UBS. Yeah, which is now UBS.
Right, UBS now. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have such a wide range of background. You sure you're a millennial?
Are you sure it was 2010? Because 2010 is post the Great Depression, so you missed that. I got killed. Yeah, man, I was at the top of my game then in 2008, and then Lehman Brothers went down, man.
It was tough. Yeah, those were a tough time.
My goodness.
Well, no, it's funny. I was joking with I think with Walter. We were talking at one point, and I said I almost don't consider myself. I'm like on the borderline. I graduated right at the 99 2000 period. So I always thought they call us some Xennials. The end of the millennial, the Generation X, and the beginning of the millennials. So
right.
And we had the tape cassettes, and I grew up listening to the '80s music, and break dancing and stuff like that. So I was just younger at the time.
I remember I used to go down south, on vacation, and I would tell somebody, what do you, I would tell someone that I work in a bank. They would ask me, what do you do for a living? And I said, I work in a bank. And the first thing that would come in to their mind was, I was a teller.
Oh, well, yeah.
It was a teller,
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more to it than that, man. Yes.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because, you have to break it down and you simplify it, and it's like, well, I work in the back office. Basically, we make sure money moves to where it needs to go.
I didn't even bother. I know, that's good. Yes, absolutely. You're right. There's a lot more to it. But So, I mean, how do you find, corporate America is a tough place. And with your leadership qualities, the skill set that you have, don't you think you should be, up around the CEO level, which I always wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be the man.
Yeah. You know what's funny? So this is kind of interesting as I transition into a different role. And, as I was at Citizens, it was more of like a smaller company. I think it had about, maybe less than 20,000 employees. And, they say the joke of like, you can be like a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was thinking like, my responsibility had grown threefold. I was, getting a little bit more money, but it just wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be. And then I got an opportunity to interview for a role at GE. And, GE at the time, I think they might have had almost 300,000 employees. Like they were, the monstrosity, like, Forbes, top 10 global company. And so I got the opportunity. I went to work in their enterprise initiatives in their PMO because I was currently working in a strategic PMO kind of role as focused more on the project side. And they had been designated as a SIFI, which is a systemically important financial institution. And basically too big to fail. And a month after I went into that role, the GE Capital had made the announcement they were going to sell the company. Like, and I think they must have sold it was like $188 billion, something like $200 billion worth of the business over those 2 years. And immediately my role changed. It was like light day. I'm like, now I was going over there trying to enhance these program management stuff. And now I'm like thinking, what can we simplify? Like, what's my next role?
Yeah, you had to merge. Did you work on you had to merge all the activities and processes, and which one had the best process versus the legacy and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, I did that. The reduction, we had like a strategy plan. We were trying to like consolidate on what we were going to work on and what we could minimize. And then I got a role. My role basically went away once we had, equalized our operating mechanisms. And then they said, hey, we want you to go. We have another opportunity we want you to look into. So that I got that opportunity working as the global operations support lead, which is where I was managing like the operations infrastructure, the guys who basically process all the transactions for the GE businesses in Treasury, which is we ended up going from 5 shared service centers to 7. We were in Cincinnati, Mexico, Bucharest, India, China, Japan, and Connecticut. And so we basically, I was doing that, managing all the payment processing. And then because we did transition service agreements when we were selling off the bank branches at Citizens, I knew about some of that program as one of the in my portfolio. So I ended up managing that program for the cash management program, processing and off the divested businesses that were sold from GE Capital to the new company. So I was in charge of that Treasury, the transition service agreement program. So that was kind of like my play on, being involved with some of those divestitures, a little bit of the M&A space. They also did a spinoff of Synchrony during that time.
Synchrony Bank,
yeah, which is the consumer finance business. So I had at least I touched a little bit of this stuff here and there. I was in charge of the business continuity planning piece, which is basically the disaster recovery plan.
Yeah.
So I touched a little bit of everything in there, and then at the end of it, I knew my role was going away. So it was a moment where I was like, okay, I did this well. Got we got pretty good, on our bonuses. We got paid out 100% on each one of those. We met our goals, and that was when me and my wife were thinking about having kids. So I got got a package, and that was like an interesting process, when you get that reduction in force. But I got a chance to go home for a year, and then after that, I got the role working at Microphone at the Global Treasury Transformation. So
yeah, we have similar backgrounds. We've been. But do you ever get that feeling that you last in, first out?
Well, yeah, it kind of was that. It was funny though. Yeah, because I knew it. I was like, I got in there literally. I was a month in, and it was like, oh man, I stepped into something.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I value that experience because I learned the most from that, and it was. I didn't take it in a bad way. I mean, I feel like I was still young in my career, and I knew I was gonna, find something else. And it was almost a moment of like the guys I know who did stay, folks, 20, 30 years. Like you go to GE, people they just don't leave, So it was
It's up to us. Yeah, you find the other ones, but you won't find us been there 30 years.
No,
we've been laid off a long time ago.
So
that's my observation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. I definitely knew.
Thanks.
I seen a little bit. I seen a little bit of that when I was at RBS Citizens, and similar at GE. So if you're one of the things I tell some of the guys coming up, I say you always got to be thinking about what's next. Even in that role, you can be over delivering, achieving your goals, or hitting everything, getting rated really high. But there's always a chance. You never know. The company you sold, they looking at you as a cost target.
Yep. Downsize.
Downside.
Yeah.
It's always possible.
Those synergies. Yeah, they're looking at the synergies, man.
That's right.
Yeah. But before we move on, go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was gonna mention him supporting Black-owned businesses. I wanted to touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, can you just tell us about your family and friends entrepreneurship endeavors that you have?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's funny, like I guess growing up, I mentioned my grandmother just getting us into the whole like volunteering, community service, and throughout high school, it was Jrotc. We were doing food drives, and you're doing all kinds of like pancake breakfasts and stuff, and that continued on throughout the corporate world, and Hope Habitat for Humanity and different types of Hope for Haiti, things I've had a chance to do. But more recently in the past couple of years, like I felt like as we talk about like the Black-owned businesses, and I remember hearing a stat where they were saying like at one point there was like 40 Black-owned banks, and then now there's like less than 10 or something like that. I think the exact number is 4 or something.
4, I think it's 4. Yeah,
it's 4.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it's like that's where we need the most investment. It's like that's not a small business, but the Black-owned business. So a number of my cousins and family members have done things, and they've really done well for themselves. One of my cousins, funny enough, she started a lingerie line, and I remember when she was a Ford model. She'd been in Vogue and In Style and Bazaar and all these glamour and Cosmopolitan. And then at one point she was like, it's nice doing that, but I think she is at a point where she was like wanted to actually be the person who was owning the business. So hats off to her. When she started her company Liberté, was really like just a really startup, and she I was more of like an advisory board person looking at her business plan and finances and things of that nature. But she's now like more recently was just got her. You could find her lingerie in it's Bloomingdale's. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's online. It was just an In Style magazine in December. So she's done really well for herself. Got really good investment. Another cousin also, she's actually a poet, a director, and an author. Her name is Bempe Fajiembo. And we were able to be, me and my wife made a film called Love and Zodiac. She's also an actress, writer, and director. She made a film before, and so that was my first introduction into being executive producer for that film. And I did a little acting myself.
Uh-huh.
You gotta give us the links to that or something.
Yeah, I'm putting it in the chat room. Definitely.
All right, great.
But yeah, so the film Boju Weigh In is going to be in the Tribeca. It's got submitted to the Tribeca Film Festival, and so hopefully have some things going on well with that. And it's just a number of great people and young and up and coming, this next generation doing great things. So as
That's
I get
amazing.
a chance to, that's how I've found and had an opportunity to give back. Just try to give some love and to show support wherever I can.
Awesome.
Excellent.
That's great.
Yeah, we're pushing up against the clock. So, yes. Chris, you have any questions or comments for Jevan?
Yeah, he's working at Johnny Root Steakhouse.
Yeah, well, man has a day job.
Move on. That's right.
He has a day job. How about you? How about you, Mr.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm here. I'm chopping up some eggs now to go on the steak. So I had to open the screen up. But listen, man, it's fantastic hearing everything that you're involved. I wanted to tell y'all, right? This is going back a lot of years. My very first job was at Oppenheimer.
I remember Oppenheimer.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was a cold caller. I don't know if you know what you guys.
Yeah.
You know, I was making. I think I was making $5 or $3.35 an hour at that time. And they wanted me to wear a suit. Right, they wanted me to wear a suit and tie every day. And I'm like, I'm making $3 an hour. You want me to come here and wear a suit and a tie? But I didn't stick with it. But a friend of mine, he got into the program as well, and he stuck with it. He became very successful in that world. But I got a small peek into it, doing what I was doing. And it's a tough place to be, man. Yeah. When you come from certain communities and you don't see yourself there. Like, I didn't see a lot of people that look like me.
Oh no,
I was happy right. But I was happy that my boy stuck it out and he became successful. And I'm happy that you guys stick it out. Like, it's not easy, and it's good to hear these stories about people who go through the trenches and, you know, work hard and struggle and push themselves to be great and to do great things. I'm looking forward to seeing that movie. Good luck.
Yeah.
Glad to talk.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to look at it.
Thanks, Johnny Rouge. We appreciate you jumping in.
Yeah, Chris. Thank you, man. You have a profitable, fruitful weekend.
Super Bowl weekend,
yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
I'm working on it, you know?
Yeah. I'm from Ohio, so I'm rooting for Cincinnati.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Listen, I know you're starving for it over there, so good luck to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Cincinnati.
Yeah. Anytime you're doing great things, man, with your business, remember Johnny Roots. We come and make some great food for you, man. We'll make it happen.
Definitely, I'm gonna check it out. My wife is from the city. She lived in Staten Island in the Bronx, and
I'm in Staten Island. Awesome, yeah, that's great.
So we make it out there. We'll check it out.
Yeah, you also leaning towards entrepreneurship too, right? Gradually.
Yeah. Gradually. I mean, I've done a little bit, stuff here. I'm looking at. I won't put any of the energy out there yet to put the pressure on me, but hopefully working to create some apps or within
awesome
digital banking space. It's a really interesting place now. We've got a lot with blockchain. You've got the non-fungible token.
The NFTs. Yeah, I've had to study that because it caught me off guard. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a lot out there, and that's where I think the future of banking and payments are going.
Apps
transition to PayPal, and banks are now. You see less brick and mortar.
Right.
And I remember
everything is via app now.
I can't even find a Capital One out here, man.
Oh,
I gave up.
It's hard to find a brick and mortar. I love Capital One, but it's hard to find a brick and mortar. And you got a lot of companies like Affirm and SoFi. Right. A lot of those things channeling in that direction. So, it's getting tough. Yeah. You got to be very aware of what's going on.
And then you got security exposure when you're using your device, your cell phone or something. And then you got to be very careful with that. Mm-hmm. So it's a mess. But hopefully, we'll get through it like we got through everything else, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that's just going to have to happen.
All right.
Security has got to be real.
All right, so I'm going to turn it over. And again, thank you, Jevan, for spending this time with us and helping us to push out information to our listeners. And who we got coming up next?
Oh, boy. I'm excited because, it's Black History Month. We have, for next Friday, newly elected Bronx Borough President, a return guest, Miss Vanessa Gibson. Next Friday at 6 p.m. Yeah, we're excited to have her. And then we have Women's History Month coming up. Yeah, I'm excited for her
Awesome.
because she's very active in the Bronx and throughout the city. You know, she works closely with the mayor, so I'm excited to hear what she has.
And she made history, right? She made history.
She definitely made history. She's the first black. That's right. She sure did. That's amazing. Yeah, that's huge. That is huge. So we have a lot of things coming up. We also have some Monday night shows coming up as well with some great guests. So please follow our website for updates, www.thewaltweekly.com, and also on IG and Facebook, The Walt Weekly. You will find updates there as well. But also Walter has a new blog that he calls Walter's Corner. So every week he makes writes what's going on in during the week, how he feels about something that he is interested in during that week. So you guys, please follow the Walt Weekly on Podbean. And Jevan, we really appreciate you. You have an amazing resume, bio, and I salute you. I salute you for everything you've done and contributed to in the community and towards your family and the Walt Weekly for sure.
And thank you for having me on here. I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and share my story. And I think what you guys are doing a great work. I think these are the stories people need to hear.
Definitely,
you got relevant, very good topics, and I'm going to continue to share it. And,
definitely, when you come out with your entrepreneurship, we're going to bring you back on.
All right.
Yeah, you got to come back.
Come back. Let us know what you're doing. That's right. That's right. Put the pressure on and come back to the Walt Weekly. Maybe you could design an app for us. Yeah. So,
I think Michelle, you're hanging around me too long.
I'm picking up. Too. He's in the background saying the same thing. Yep, I'm too. And myself as an entrepreneur. So we appreciate you. We appreciate our live audience for joining us. Thank you for your comments in the chat room. We look forward to you all staying with us for our next week Friday live, and also we have a show on Monday, the following Monday after the Friday live. So you can follow us, like I said, at thewaltweekly.com, IG and Facebook, The Walt Weekly, Twitter, Walt Weekly, Podbean, The Walt Weekly. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and other streaming platforms. Please also support our sponsors, Michelle Sweeney Hair Care on IG and Facebook, and also our intro and outro music, a talented musician who happens to be my handsome son, Uncle Nephew. You can find him on Instagram.
I'm just add one more thing before we sign off.
Yes, sir.
And these are for the people from my area, North Carolina and Virginia. We do have Muta Evans coming in on the 25th, which is 2 weeks from tonight. And she was one of the first Black women to own a radio station in this country.
That should be exciting. Yeah.
That should be, all right. Yes.
A lot of great women coming in. So you guys, please come back and make sure you join us next week, Friday.
All right. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Have a good Super Bowl, everybody.
Yeah. All right.
Good night.
Be safe.
That's right. Cheers.
Bengals. Yeah, go Bengals. Cheers. All right.